10 years ago, if I ever thought I would be teaching courses on how to have conversations about race, I I would not have believed it, because I grew up not knowing how to have conversations about race. And I didn't know why. I didn't I I didn't understand why I had this physiological response to even thinking about diversity or leaning in to conversations about race. And it was only through my journey into my becoming a psychotherapist, which included doing a lot of therapy, understanding what I was experiencing, and understanding what was happening to me um, from a psychological perspective. I really came to understand myself in a new way. And when there was a few things that happened when George Floyd was murdered in 2020, I noticed that there was all of these people online that were having, people were, the conversation online was just, it was chaotic, and you could see people missing each other. Um, and I thought, you know what, I thought, you know what, there's, there's got to be a way for people to be able to meet each other, because if we don't, how will we ever create change? And so my process in learning how to have conversations about race had, a lot to do with me understanding my own racial identity, and understanding how did I come to have, what were the thoughts and feelings and beliefs that I had that were related to race, that created all of these different feelings that I had within myself. So bringing together what I know from a psychotherapy perspective, and what I understand from a DEIB perspective, bringing those two pieces together was what shifted for me. I wanted people to be able to connect. And what I could see is that there was a lot of emotion that actually gets in the way. And once we have more awareness around what we're experiencing, then we can make a different choice in terms of how we want to approach any conversation, any person. And that's what happened for me. And I wanted to be able to bring that out into the world.
So, if you found other people in a similar situation along their journey, what would be one of the first things that you would tell them about wanting to become more aware and discovering their own how they identify? What recommendation would you suggest to them?
Well, it's it's the same for every one of us. It starts with starting with yourself, actually getting really curious about your own self. I think that when it comes to conversations about race and other aspects of difference, we learn about these things, with it in a cognitive way. There's like, here's the things to say, here's the things not to say, here's the things you should do, here's the things you shouldn't do, here's the things that, like unconscious bias that, we shouldn't have. But then the how we do all of those things, how we interact with the person who's in front of us, that piece is important to know. And I think that's where people feel really stuck, and, where I felt stuck myself. So, if I was talking to somebody that wanted to, understand this, it's like, you can learn all of the things cognitively, and I believe a lot of people have. But the next piece is really doing the inner work. And what that inner work is, how did I come to have this? How did I learn about this concept of race? What are the thoughts and feelings and beliefs that I've had in when it comes to understanding myself as a racial person? And also, what are the emotions that I'm experiencing as I am even thinking about this topic? You know, like if I'm working with someone, and the other pieces is actually having some, be able to get curious about your responses without judgment. Like
That's huge.
that,
Huge.
yeah, yeah, because our responses or our reactions are because of something. And if there's judgment, the moment we have a response or a reaction, we're not going there again. right? So, when I'm like in my life as a therapist, when I'm wearing my therapist hat, if I'm working with someone and they are experiencing, they're sharing something that is maybe deeply personal, or a thought they may have, or a belief that they have, sometimes they're saying something to me for the very, very first time that they've never ever realized before.
Yeah.
And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, this is why, this is how this came to be. This is the pattern that's been showing up in my life. This is the truth that's been there all along. And when people have that awareness, there's also a lot of emotions that come with that awareness. And so being able to create a space where people can be with the feelings that they need to be with,
Yeah.
that's really, really important. I, as a therapist, I would never, it would, it would be unethical for me to push somebody to feel something that they aren't ready to feel. It would be to, so instead, what I want is for people to actually get curious about what's stopping me from actually being able to feel this now. Because that's the first thing, maybe there's something happening in the room with me. Maybe there's, maybe they have a meeting right after this session and they don't want to go into, a really deep place. Maybe they're, nervous about how I might respond to them. So knowing that that's how emotions work when we're talking about anything, it's really important for me, for anyone who's, especially when it comes to this conversation about race, because it's so loaded and there's so much feeling, that including what we need to know from a psychoeducational perspective is so essential, because that's where we're the same. That's where our language is. We have a common language when it comes to our humanity. What we look like on the outside is different. What the world has told us about all these differences is, it's important to know, but we also have to know, how did I integrate this? What did I come to believe? What didn't I? And I think people are afraid to feel that. Even what do I think about my own self? Like I remember being 7 years old, and my mother, and there was a little girl that I wanted to know if she was coming to my birthday party. Like, I remember the moment that I came to know my race, and the moment that it became difficult for me to talk about my race. So I'm standing at the window. My mother's beside me, and I said, "Is, so and so coming to my birthday party?" And she said, "Well, no, because we're Black." And I remember looking down at my hand and thinking, I'm Black? Like, I literally looked at my hand and went, "Oh, that's a thing now." So at 7 years old, what was unconscious to me, but was true, all of a sudden became conscious to me, because I like bumped up against the truth of it and what it meant.
Right.
And yeah, so my mother's reason was to educate me and let me know and tell me about the world that might not see her daughters in the way that she would see us. But the other thing that happened, and it was unintentional, was that I created a belief that there must be something that's wrong with my skin. So it was like an internalized oppression, an
Right.
internalized racism that
Yeah.
really was, it was almost became more solidified as I saw what the world was telling me, through media, through whatever. And so once I started doing my own exploration, I realized that was the first time. And that's where I created this belief that it wasn't okay for me to be and fully embody my skin.
Yeah.
And so I saw the world that way. If I wasn't okay being this, I mean, how do I see other people? If I see myself as
Mm.
less than, I'm going to see other people as, better than. And that all isn't true,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know? But I had to know what that was and all those different moments in order for me to actually change it.
Thank you for
It's just,
sharing that, Natalie. That's very powerful. Because when you think about it, if we didn't have a picture or this video, for example, that we're on right now, or to look in a mirror, unless we physically look down at ourselves, that's the only way we would see the color, other than, because Otherwise, we're talking to each other, we're conversing, could be on the phone. You have no idea,
That's right.
right? And to have that
Yeah.
so solidified and brought to your attention, that, and then to embed that thought, right? And we know that not all thoughts are true, but still, like, to know that somebody's not coming for that reason,